We were talking at work the other day about fate and coincidences and like small world situations, and I thought I would share some of my experiences with you. Years ago, my sister and I went to England and Ireland to visit family for a holiday. And while we were in England, we were visiting all the touristy places in London. We found ourselves in a long queue with a lot of other people at Madame Tussauds. And while in the queue, I kept saying to my sister, there's a girl up ahead who keeps staring at us. And my sister's like, we don't know anybody here, just ignore her. But she kept doing it, and I kept turning to Sissy and saying, she keeps staring, and she's like, just ignore her. We get a bit closer, and the girl actually turns around and goes, Anne-Marie? And we're like, what the? It was my sister's best friend from high school. She'd been living in London for years, and that was the first day of all days, the first time she'd ever decided to go to Madame Tussauds, and we ran into her. So we ended up spending the day with Jenny and catching up, taking photos, and it was just the most bizarre experience. But that wasn't the only weird experience we had on that trip. When we were coming home, we were on the plane. We were in the row of three. I was in the window seat. My sister was in the middle seat when there was a young girl in the aisle seat. We're flying along, and the girl turns to us and she goes, oh, are you guys from Australia? And we're like, yeah, we are. And a little bit later, she goes, sorry, you guys from the Northern Territory? And we're like, oh, yeah, we are. Figuring she'd seen a sticker or something on one of our bags. And then a little bit later, she goes, are you from Alice Springs? And we're like, wow, yeah, okay, yeah, we are. And then she goes, are you from insert street name? She was from the same street from us, grew up just down the road. She'd been living in London for years, and she was finally coming home. She used to catch the bus with us going to school. And then another small world story. My husband and I were on a road trip years ago. We'd been travelling through Victoria and New South Wales. We were coming back home via South Australia back to the Northern Territory. And we pulled into Mannum, which is where my husband's family were living at the time. And we had been out of phone service. So we came into the town and our phones let us know that we were back in service. We had messages. And so I clicked on one of the messages. It was from a very special friend of mine, Helen, who I hadn't seen for years, used to work with. And she just said, is it Mannum that Shane's family live in? And I called her and I said, yeah, it is. Why are you asking? She goes, oh, we're here. We've been here for a few days. And I just thought I'd ask. And so we arranged to meet with them the next day. It was just so random that we were both she was living in Western Australia at the time. So it was just so bizarre. And I love it when it doesn't even have to be a big coincidence. It can just be something small. I was at work one day, it was last year or the year before, and I was talking to an English couple who were coming to check in to go on the train trip. And I was just being nice, and I said, what part of England are you from? We were talking about where they were from. I hadn't heard of it. And I said, the only parts I know of England are London and Southampton, because that's where family's from. And he said, we actually just live out of Southampton. And I'm like, oh, that's really weird. And he said, what part of Southampton are they from? I'm like, I don't really know. I said, the only thing I know that rings a bell, I said, is Upper Shirley. They live in around Upper Shirley. And their faces just dropped. He was born in Upper Shirley, and it was that's the only place in Southampton I know of where my family lives, and that just happened to be where that guy was from. Now, I love hearing small world stories and stories of fate and kismet and coincidence and things like that. So please stitch this, tag me in your stories, whatever. I love hearing them.